Today, session 7 looks at the HANA monitoring, management, and automation, on what is available from SAP as well as from solutions like OSIsoft and IT-Conductor. This is actually a refresh of a topic we did last year. There's been some updates, and we want to make sure that we keep you updated on the technology and provide you with adequate information on what's available out there. And so about OSIsoft and IT-Conductor, we are a 21-year-old basis-focused expertise, and within the last 16 years providing IT system management and innovation in the SAP management space. We have a long-standing relationship with SAP and other partners. So as far as OSIsoft, it's a set of management pack for Microsoft System Center, it's an on-premise solution targeting the management of SAP, business objects, HANA, ASE, and the growing list of features that SAP is bringing out in terms of various different SAP NetWeaver and newer components. About IT-Conductor, IT-Conductor is a newer technology on the next generation cloud-based system management. The idea is to monitor manage without installation. So as a pure cloud subscription, use agentless management. And so from a perspective of management as a service, we fully manage the system monitoring so that you are simply focusing being a user. So this is a platform that is offered as a cloud-based subscription. So our mission is to stop guessing and start managing, to help our customers automate, monitor, manage, and optimize SAP operations and performance. What are the options available? Oh, HANA monitoring options, there are plenty. Today, SAP has a direction. This is one of the new announcements they're doing, is they are going to provide SAP DB Control Center. It's kind of the centerpiece for monitoring the databases. The existing DBA Cockpit, most SAP basis people are aware of this tool. They use that on a day-to-day basis within the NetWeaver stack to manage the SAP databases. There is the SAP HANA Studio, so HANA admins are typically used to using this platform in order to monitor individual databases. There's various different perspectives, so we'll go through that. The newer SAP HANA Cockpit, this comes kind of fully configured, delivered with each HANA environment. Comes with the pre-configured Fiori apps, the tiles in the UI5 format. And of course, the Solution Manager, currently version 7.2 has been released. It's not much update has been done for technical monitoring since Solution 7.1, but it's there. And from us, there is the SAP HANA Management Pack from OSIsoft in conjunction with System Center Operation Manager. So that's a Microsoft SCOM monitoring framework, the enterprise solution. And of course, we have the IT-Conductor platform, which is the cloud-based, agentless monitoring, subscription-based. So those are some of the tools that are available. There are other tools we have looked at in the past, including SAP LVM, but it's not as extensive, so we won't cover them today. There are numerous blogs and videos on our blog site. You can look at those if you wanted to. So there are plenty of management publications that we have produced over the last year or so regarding SAP HANA management. So there's extensive material out there on our monitoring blog. So if you visit our monitoring blog topic, in fact, I think this is one of them. We have a series of, if you go to the HANA monitoring blog topic here, there's like 14 articles today as of publications we've done in terms of various different aspects of monitoring, managing HANA. Everything from multi-tenancy, how to set up your monitoring in a multi-tenant database container environment. We have solution tools overview, etc. There is also the Solution Manager Setup Guide, an ebook that we publish. So with that, you can actually start from this block here. There is a download for the ebook to help you set up, configure HANA monitoring through Solution Manager. It's an extensive, I think it's 100-page to get that up and running. So if you want to go through that exercise, that's available there for free download. And also we produce a series of tools, video monitoring in terms of various different aspects of SAP, including HANA. So there is one there. There's also the comparison matrix. So the matrix itself follows the process that we provide in terms of how to select your SAP monitoring tools. Last summer, I think we produced this, but there is a methodology that we publish on looking at different assessment on how to choose to select your tool appropriate for the job. We're first looking at the ease and implementation, the maintenance. There's metrics collection methods, how it handles availability monitoring, how it handles thresholds management, notification, recovery actions, and reporting. So some of these 8 or 9 areas are available, and you can look at the in this block here. There's a place where you can actually download part of the monitoring matrix comparison. So we again did a comparison matrix. So on our website you can actually download most of the tool we talked about today. We won't be covering CCMS, so that doesn't cover HANA monitoring. We'll cover Solution Manager. We won't cover, as I said, LVM, because that's kind of limited in some capacity in terms of monitoring, but it's a useful tool if you are integrating with some other automation tool. We'll cover the DBA Cockpit, Studio, and HANA Cockpit, and then the management pack for SCOM as well as IT-Conductor. So again, I invite you to kind of look at the matrix. If you haven't seen that, that's kind of useful if you are looking and assessing what tools to use for various different roles within your SAP environment, how to monitor and manage that. Okay, so let's back to the present. So those are materials we reference. The challenges, why do we look for tools and processes and validity and performance management of HANA? SAP will tell you that simplification, but HANA may be simple for the business. It's not necessarily simple for IT. So anybody who's been working hands-on with HANA will probably recognize that there are many options on cloud premise, on hybrid environment, scale up, scale out. There's many different platforms now, not just Linux on Wintel, but there's also, you have VMware, you have cloud-based deployment on Zen, you have various different platforms, even IBM, P-Series supporting Linux. There are many complex operations involved in the HANA environment to fully manage a production environment. Backup, standby, managing replication, SLT. I think last week we covered a topic on system landscape transformation as a replication product that primarily used in HANA environment for keeping live data on across the SAP landscape. So all of these brings complexity to the HANA ecosystem. And there are many versions that we've seen in the field from SP 8 all the way through 10. So if you have anything in there in between and SAP rolling out 11 and 12, and of course you got to keep update with all these versions and different tools available. With each HANA environment, again, there's complexity within it. The components involving different services, what they do, they all need to be kind of monitored and managed, because any of those services could be having performance impact or availability issues. And then I get alerts and metrics associated with that. There are tons of them. Alerts that possible come out of the threshold that put in by system checks that HANA has put in. Also the metrics per system, per service. And then again, on top of that, there's many apps. So it's not just a database platform, but you're running native, you're running BW or Suite on HANA, and again, the new S/4HANA environment. I think what we have is basically a suite of environment that now layer on top brings complexity to the landscape. So again, there are many tools, as we saw on the previous screen. Those are just a few of them out there. There's probably more, and there are many teams that might look at it from different perspectives. So if you need a process, again, I would invite you to look at how to select your SAP monitoring tool. That's the blog we mentioned previously. So today, with the time we have, we'll take a look at a high level. We're not going to go in depth in too much. Some of these will require a full, hour or more, if you will, to go into detail. So it's to provide an overview of what's available to you and what are some of the benefits and some of the drawbacks in some using those tools. So the first one is the SAP DBA Cockpit, right? That's a GUI base, comes out of NetWeaver. Most people are aware and familiar with the environment. If you are monitoring more than one database, you need to set up database connection to each of those remote databases. It requires a SAP host agent on each of those remote databases, so you need to authenticate with that. And then, it's popular because most basis folks have access, or DBA folks have access to that within an SAP DBA environment. It does provide fairly comprehensive environment for performance, monitoring, space type, but you do need to log on to that GUI, and it's not really a operation standpoint, but it's more of a DBA or basis standpoint. From the HANA Studio, again, HANA Studio is something that is every developer has access to, but the bases also have access to, that just provide you different perspective. It's a Java Studio client. In order to kind of run it as an Eclipse, you need to basically load the proper perspective for administration. That's kind of the basis of that. It's a simple monitoring tool. It can be fairly heavy. It's a Python base. It has some DBA admins that uses it. It can be fairly memory hungry. Again, you can use that for troubleshooting, deep dive down purposes, but from a central monitoring standpoint, it may not be the best tool. And we'll look at that briefly as well. The HANA Cockpit is something that SAP is trying to improve version to version. We've seen some evolutions of what the Fiori apps on top of that runs on the HANA Access Engine, provides the tile base. So it's all tile based. It used to be a couple tiles that were able to drill down. Now it's getting a little bit more richer with towards SP10. We'll take a look into that. It comes pre-configured with HANA, so that's something that people can use. But again, I don't think it's really a central system management platform, because it just basically looks at the database. There's no application layer type tool that looks at what's driving some of the workload. Or, so from a, if you're looking at NetWeaver or S4HANA, you need something on top of that as well. And then you have, of course, the all-incumbent SAP Solution Manager. And again, there is the long, lengthy ebook that we have, a 3-part series to set up that environment. So Solution Manager is more of a centralized environment for SAP, although it can provide data at the database level. Some of the database monitoring we find to be kind of lacking because it summarizes and aggregates the data. So in order to reduce the noise coming into central monitoring, they've actually probably aggregated too much in what our opinions are about that. And it also requires a lot of updates in order to keep the environment going. So those are some of the SAP tools. I kind of want to look at the actual tool themselves at this point. Take a look at the DBA Cockpit. So we know that, if you are running on an SAP environment, you are logged into the GUI, you have DBA Cockpit. So this is DBA Cockpit inside NetWeaver. As you can see, there's a quite extensive amount of data that's available. So if you configure this, if you logged on to the NetWeaver environment, of course this assumes that you're running HANA with an SAP NetWeaver app. If you don't, then you do remote database connectivity setup. So this gives you a good overview of the system environment. You can take a look at even the drill down capability to look at some of the services that are running under a particular HANA environment. You have performance related information. So all of this is something that is comes pre-built. It has a lot of procedures and packages integrated into the SAP DBA Cockpit that queries the underlying HANA database. So we find this to be a good tool if you spend most of your time inside SAP GUI during your day of managing and monitoring SAP. However, this tool has a drawback. Of course, it doesn't really notify you if you have to set up. You want to do some kind of configuration for monitoring that you're not there. Of course, you need to be notified when there's some issues. Then you really need to integrate that into a kind of a full system management platform. But for what it does here as a good troubleshooting tool, I would say this provides a lot of information. So you can look down at the various different levels available. We looked at the service. You can look at the volumes. You can look at your database backup, your planning calendar, what you're running on scripts, etc. So DBA Cockpit, nothing fancy, but it is a good set of tools for people who want to be able to get a quick glimpse. You do need to be able to access DBA Cockpit. There are certain privileges that you need to do that with. Okay. So the other tool that we will take a look at is the Studio. So this is kind of a snapshot, and we'll step through. The HANA Studio is something native for HANA environment, and again, this is an Eclipse tool. You install the platform, you have access to the Studio. The Studio you need to authenticate as a database user. So one of the advantages of using DBA Cockpit, of course, is that you don't need a database user. You just basically log on to SAP via your SAP GUI logon. But if you want to go into the Studio, you will need a user that has access to both public and monitoring roles in order to look at the data. But once you're in here, you could have multiple systems added to your landscape so that you can see them as system monitor overview, and then you have to drill into specific database. So for instance, in the database view, you can get an overview of the environment from usage, how much memory, how much CPU, disk, etc. And you have access to also look at the various services, what their resource consumptions are. You can actually refresh manually, or you can put on a auto refresh. So you can actually stare at the screen and see if it's changing. And, so this is something I would find that if you have one environment, you may, get by doing this. There are certain things that you can use to configure. So under configuration, they do allow you to, I believe, actually under alerts. Under alerts, the alerts that come in are pre-configured from HANA standpoint to do specific checks. So the checks that you have on the environment, every version delivers a bunch of checks, but basic checks like backups, disk usage, etc., are run on a periodic basis. And you can then configure if you wanted to send an email notification, let's say, to yourself when there is checks that meet some thresholds. So each of the checks, they have thresholds in here that you can override to make sure that you get the appropriate notifications. And you can assign different checks to different email addresses as well. So if you had somebody responsible for host level, you can assign that. So, but it's got to be up and running and connected to the actual, HANA database, obviously, to do that. Right. But I find that if you're doing something like troubleshooting some kind of threads or sessions on the box, this is something you can do from a remote JDBC client. You don't need to log on to the actual HANA host. Similarly, this tool is available on the HANA host itself. If you want to use a HANA database console, there is also a tool there. We won't get into that, but that's a Python tool you can run into. But again, here you can configure, if you configure, want to monitor expensive statement traces, you will need to configure and provide some override as to what the threshold are before it starts capturing the long-running SQLs. So that has availability to do that. From a monitoring standpoint, you can look at your volumes, you can look at your files, you can look at some I/O stats, etc. So there's data here that's pulled from various different monitoring views at the statistics schema inside the HANA database. All right. So I would say most of the time, if you are monitoring, managing one environment, this is a tool that you could use to take a look even at the trace logs level for certain host level. You can look at it from here as well. And then I think one more area, you can actually monitor the load of the HANA database itself. So in this is a pre-configured set of KPI from the list that you can check. So if you're looking at memory usage, for instance, you can do that. It will put it on the chart and you can set your refresh interval. So it's a little bit more, something that's up and available as a screen that you would stare at during your working day if you're monitoring, managing one environment, or you just want to dive in and look for a root cause to a particular problem. What it doesn't do is it doesn't really have any nice analytic stuff you can look at various different things on the same time axis to see what's going on besides this particular load type monitor. But I find this to be kind of the native tool that all HANA admins have to get used to in the first place. It's not really an enterprise monitoring, but it is a tool that's fairly common among the HANA expertise people. So let's take a look at the next tool, which is the HANA Cockpit. In fact, the HANA Cockpit can be launched from the HANA Studio, or you can launch it directly using a HTML. So this is UI5. That's a Fiori delivered app, and it looks something like that. We can take a look. So if you went to the HDB environment and you can say open HANA Cockpit, it would launch a browser. In fact, I have one up here already. So for instance, if you launch the browser, you're in this HANA environment. So these are Fiori app. This happened to be the HANA SP10 database platform running the BW environment. So as a demo, we'll step through this environment. So these tiles are pre-delivered, pre-configured. You can drill in. So similar to the HANA Studio, you can go into Managed Services. You're able to, anywhere here, context sensitive. For instance, I want to get into, look into the memory consumption of this. I can click into the memory used. And you will see it breaks down. So this is nice. I like this more than the HANA Studio for various different things. If I want to go in here and take a look at what my higher usage of the memory, what pool they're in, they in the, let's say they were, I'm curious how much memory is used in column store tables. Believe you can actually click on that and it will show you what percentage, how much memories, how many tables, what are in the delta, what are in the main storage area. So you can do some diagnostic. Obviously, as a HANA is a memory in-memory database, so it's important to monitor what your memory usage is. And so this gives you that. What it doesn't do, what I don't find to be useful in here is that there's not historical data. So if you wanted to look at for instance, one table, what is that table using and how has it grown over time? It's not something this thing does very well. So you can go into and do some high-level overview, if you will, and see where your consumptions are, various different aspects of it. But it doesn't give you kind of a historical analysis for trend analysis, if you will. Mm-hmm. Again, you kind of know what you're looking for in terms of tools for day-to-day maintenance, monitoring, as well as longer-term trend analysis based on our 9 areas in the selecting the tools. So we go back to the home. Other things available, again, we look at services, but your alerts are here, similar to the HANA Studio. The alerts are available. You could go in here and filter on priority, how many times something occurred. This one is an example. Backup didn't exist. You can change your time frame and look at that. You can configure where those go as well. Believe you can configure alerts down here. Similar to what we saw in Studio, you can configure by each of the checks. and how often to check it, and where does the email recipient get sent to for notifications. Okay. Other areas you look at, of course, in memory usage. This goes back to a little bit more. So in the KPI group, you typically have CPU, disk, and memory. It's pulling it from various different views, both from the HANA statistics as well as from the SAP HANA agent. Okay, so these are some of the useful KPIs to look at. You can look at CPU utilization. Again, if your box was busy, there was busy here. You can see various different KPIs, right? So this information provides some of that data. So some metrics like CPU, memory, etc., they do have some historical information, but for things like, you know, what my table sizes were at a certain time, it doesn't track that. And then even for disk usage, I believe it lists what your disk size or your persistent state on your file system. User tables, again, this is monitoring if you have, this is kind of useful. Let's say you were curious about, you know, what are my busy tables, how many reads, how many writes and stuff. So this has a nice new thing that they have here. This wasn't here in, I think, SB8, but they added this recently. So you can take a look by reads, by writes, you know, various different clusters of tables, where they access. I did a test this morning just to have some data, but you can see this repo source table. Activity was listed here. So there are some useful information to draw from that. You can also monitor, like, again, long-running statements. I think you can get a statement list. And I believe some of these you have to configure the also long-running statement. If your service ever restarted, if you're in a scale-out or scale-up environment with multiple nodes backing up each other, the master, the slave, the standby, etc., most of the HANA services, it's important to monitor restarts, because the daemon actually restarts some of the services a couple of times. If it can't do it past a few times, then it will declare a fail. But it's good to know when something restarts, because sometimes it just errors out and you don't know that it restarts. You don't really have a way to troubleshoot problems. Dumps as well. So you can get overall system environment, platform environment. So this is kind of the HANA Cockpit. You know, I think it's good. It's connected to one system. Eventually, the cockpit, I'm not sure how useful it will be once they integrate. Again, SAP is trying to do the database control center, so the same data will feed into a DB, they call it DCC, database control center, which is actually originated from a Sybase system control environment. So I think there's a little bit of conflict. They've got solution manager for like system management, and then we've got database control center for databases. So there's a myriad of tools you need to consider as to, you know, what purpose and where to feed all the data in. But so database control center can take the data from various HANA environment and feed it in there. We won't cover that today because the DCC is actually quite new. They haven't even, it's kind of a future roadmap, but they're trying to go there with that. Okay. So the other tool from SAP that we typically run into, obviously, is SAP Solution Manager. Everybody who pays SAP maintenance has it. We've had people that actually aren't on SAP support, so they don't have SOLMAN with an active contract or connection to SAP support. But most people do have Solution Manager. Again, I would invite you to take a look at our ebook if you wanted to set that up, but it is quite involved. It requires a fairly beefy solution manager system. It also requires a lot of connection setup, technical configuration on the managed node, as well as the solution manager itself, going through the wizard, making sure everything's connected, all the lights, light green, etc. So we have various different videos and content in that if you're interested. So, so we have solution manager in our lab environment for demo purposes, and this is a view of a BW on HANA. So you can see that after you set up, like I say, like 100 pages worth of steps, you get to a point where you have the ABAP stack sitting on top of the HANA database. So HDB being the HANA database, and then the host that feeds up to that. All right, so it's nice, pretty diagrams. What you have is, if you are in the alert view, in fact, you could click into that, configure and use and share with along with other systems. So here's kind of an alert drill down. It's a launch is a and these are all kind of WebDin Pro apps within Solution Manager. So I find it to be fairly slow. If this is just one system, but if you're monitoring like 20 systems, you might get bogged down with the amount of data, because Solution Manager itself also relies on the back end being a data warehouse. So when you configure Solution Manager, you have the option of using an external BW as a data store for historical data, or you can use it within the Solution Manager environment itself. So on a small environment, you might go with the easier option of using the BW on the Solution Manager. So under the HANA database, we'll have let the alert kind of come up. Here's the alert inbox, sorry. So, HANA alert inbox, you have kind of the worst, the total number of alerts, number of changes, but it's very hard to get the detail as to when something happened, and because you have to actually still get onto the manage node to get the root cause analysis information. We find this to be kind of a central place where SAP does the aggregation and summary of a lot of data. But if you really want to get the detailed information for root cause, you still need to kind of have a log on to the target environment to do that, right? So like some of these, you can also configure integration into, notification or ticketing system where it may open different things. But here you have, like a status is open, this alert went on. You would have to actually get detail, open it up. So there's many levels of kind of drill down, which is, I don't find that to be very good. I just get screens after screens after screens of information to get to the actual alert, and then still you have to get onto the manage node. You might have to log on to the actual managed system itself too. So in this case, you can see that this particular alert, has the maximum last number, but it doesn't actually have detail as to what the cause is. If you wanted to bring this chart up, you can click here, and it should load a graphic, again, another pop-up. So I found this to be kind of very heavy on your desktop. So if you did this several times in metric monitoring, it can gobble up quite a bit of memory. And then if actually you leave the view up to run like this, over a while, I find that to be also a huge Java memory leak. In fact, it uses Flash, so it actually consumes up a lot of data. But it's here. You can look at it from a database standpoint. It looks at availability from the services restart, so you can see some of the same information that we saw on the other places. But again, the level detail in Solution Manager, to me, I have a least favorite, because it doesn't provide me the depth of detail that I want. It's kind of a nice place to send everything to, but I don't find it useful, because I can't even put these things onto the same chart to find out what the root cause is of my problem. So that's kind of my take on this. I think that a lot of people have experience with E2C. So this chart here has no data, and it's kind of useless to me. But if you do get something out of Solution Manager, let me know how you're using it. Many people might have scenarios configured. You can customize. All of these templates come from Solution Manager. You'd have to create templates, override them, threshold, decide if you want to notify. So again, it requires kind of a full-time Solution Manager expert to be part of your team. If you spend enough time managing and maintaining, monitoring it, you might get something out of it. Okay, but so let's go to what other alternatives we have, and this kind of draws a different picture on our handling of system management for HANA, at least. So we have two solutions. One is from the SAP HANA Management Pack. This is it's been out for 3 or 4 years now. We work with Microsoft in integrating with their enterprise monitoring platform called SCOM, and you can simply deploy this. That's the advantage. In about an hour, you can, forego any kind of agent installation. So from a central standpoint, connect up to HANA and monitor it very easily. And the database management pack, again, are native and requires no additional hardware. And you can access the SCOM console, either Google or web. The other alternative we have, like I say, is the cloud-based IT-Conductor. It's a SaaS offering, agentless. And with a single proxy per site, we can basically monitor all your SAP environment, including your HANA database or other database you might have running there. So it's a complete IT performance, application performance management platform in the cloud, and with minimal configuration, because we have standard best practices that we already create, that we discover. So if you're going to monitor HANA, we discover the services, we discover various different components, and then we start monitoring right away. And so you become the user of the platform rather than maintaining, monitoring in terms of the management of the actual extra piece of software or hardware, if you will. So this is the SCOM management pack for HANA. In the HANA environment, we have various different perspectives too. So the operations console is what the enterprise monitoring folks have access to. It's also available as a web console. So this is a high-level landscape. You can have some multiple HANA environment. You can drill down to see, various different things that are healthy, not healthy. Each area that we maintain and monitor and manage becomes an object. So for instance, this one is we're doing a synthetic check of a particular transaction in HANA and see how well it runs and response time, etc. So it comes up healthy or not healthy based on thresholds. So that's kind of one view of it, the landscape environment. We provide out of the box the dashboard. So for dashboard perspective, you can have service level objectives set up per system. These are basically availability monitoring based on percentage of uptime in the last. You can configure 12 hours, 6 hours, 24 hours, whatever your service level agreement is. And then each system will be tracked based on those availability. So in this dashboard, you can have your alert screens from multiple HANA environment into one place. You can look at all your service utilization for various different CPU, memory utilization for your HANA databases, your volume utilization, your cache hit rate. So this is an example of a dashboard. Dashboards are configurable. You basically can just go through a wizard and select the data that you want out of the System Center's data warehouse, which all of our data gets pushed into there. The monitoring data becomes available for this kind of dashboarding. Okay, so if you were going to look at some of the information, let's just go back to our console here. If we go into the host level, you can click into, let's say, this environment, and it has warning. You can actually see the data below as to the host itself. So we pick all this information up from the host, what it's running on. You can double click on something that is not healthy. It will list here availability, and you can see state changes when it went from healthy to not healthy. So you can define the number of samples as well before you define it to be a unhealthy node, or when it becomes healthy again, etc. Just an example. If you uncheck this, there are other things that are healthy that are not reported can come up. So, various things like memory use, all of these other different host level monitors. So this is, at the host level, this is available, but you can look at various different aspects that we monitor. So for instance, to alert panel. So we take the HANA alert and we bring it into SCOM, and we post it as a SCOM alert. So an event that be able to send for notification if you subscribe to it, and details available as to the actual alert itself. So if you have troubleshooting, you can actually go here and see this series of alerts. So you can also deduplicate these. So if something happens a lot, you can say, there's a duplication feature in SCOM to see the latest alerts and how old is the oldest alert, and also how many times something happened. So that's one link. So the alerts you have. We also discover the schedule procedures. So inside HANA Database, if you might have a bunch of collected jobs or specific database jobs that run to either check or do something specific, you can monitor them as well. So these are for instance, some of the jobs that we discover, right? And you can actually look at performance view, to see how they run. So you might look at the duration job, or maybe that one didn't run. There's also some other things like, I think we do similar to synthetic transaction. These are, as opposed to database job, these are things that we configure. So you can set up synthetic transactions. We'll, let's say, run a particular SQL or a particular procedure. So for instance, this one, you can say, tell me when something ran, how long it ran, whether it ran successfully, whether it failed. So as a synthetic type monitoring, you can do something on a regular basis, or from a agentless platform for monitoring. Okay, so for instance, that's synthetic environment. In the system view, again, you can see if you click on something healthy, something unhealthy. For instance, let's do unhealthy. You have all the components discovered. So again, we discover these and start monitoring. So for each HANA database, you look at the services available. So in this case, we have an index server that's in warning status, has a performance warning. We'll click on that, and warning has a status of a table lock that exceeded a lock time. You can even see what the lock time was, the number of samples, and what the time was. Or you can unfilter it, and you will get all the performance monitors that are delivered. Now, we don't turn everything on, but you can override them inside System Center for whatever you like to monitor. So, for instance, we have CPU consumption for the service, response time for the service, shared memory use, etc., so on and so forth. So these health monitors are something that can be very useful from a monitoring standpoint, right? And you can also, again, chart them as performance. We can look at performance view, and in the performance view, there are many things that you can search for, and also all items, and then you can check, for instance, the the areas of interest that you want on there, and you can also change the time as well if you're looking at longer time period. So if you want to look at the last 8 hours, for instance, and that pulls the information from the operations database. So this is System Center. It's an enterprise monitoring platform. It's used for central notification engine, and also from a monitoring of performance, as well as alert metrics and availability standpoint. So this is a product that's available today from Ozisoft as a management pack. The best of breed approach to HANA monitoring is actually our IT-Conductor. As I said, is a cloud-based performance management automation in the cloud. The mission of IT-Conductor is really to help you manage your environment and stop guessing in terms of very different aspects, what's going on. So you may have information about the database, but what's going on the app level, what's going on at different, even the systems that are not directly monitored, but it may be a system that is in the ecosystem that is sending data to it. So it's a monitoring as a service, right? So when you authenticate, you come in, you assign one of the dashboard. This is one of the dashboard we created. It's called Basis. So in a dashboard, let's say you have an alert. This is a physical memory alert. Looks like for a HANA database, for instance. So you can actually drill directly in from the alert, and it will come into the context of that problem. So there's no, you notice before I went into Solution Manager, I had to go to 4 or 5 things before I would get some information. So in this case, I clicked on alert. There was some memory utilization threshold that was crossed. I clicked, I get into a chat. You can see kind of the breadcrumb here. So this happens to belong to an index server, part of the services monitoring for a HANA database as part of a bunch of HANA systems. And then you see the yellow, the red threshold, and you can see annotations when something got generated. So when it crosses the red, there was an alert generated. And then there was actually a what we call auto recovery action, right? So the power of management isn't just to monitor, it's to take some auto recovery if you can. So in this case, we do some garbage cleanup. You can see there based on a threshold, right? And that can be easily defined in terms of what my thresholds would be. So for instance, in this case, if it exceeds, this service exceeds a certain amount of usage, you know, I can throw a yellow or red. I can even execute a recovery action, and you can see down here. So recovery actions are something that your DBA team can have a whole bunch of scripts or things that will take care of common things. Try run this, try run that. In this case, just a garbage collection that SAP didn't run because it either hasn't put it into schedule, or the schedule is time-based, but we do this based on exception, right? You don't need to wait for time. And you can see clearly from the chart that without some garbage cleanup on this service, this memory utilization might keep increasing. But because we are keeping it fairly managed, right, that we are managing to keep this service somewhat healthy under the limit. Okay, so in here you have also the ability, let's go back to, as I mentioned, HANA service. You can go back to the database, or you can go straight into a save dashboard, if you will. But I'm just going to go in here, take a look. So this HANA database actually belongs to BW environment. Another way to take a look at it, in fact, I might go there just to show you, because we create service-related management, we relate the database as part of a high entity. So similar to Solution Manager, you saw that there was a ABAP stack on top. We can go into an SAP environment, and it will show you, since on this one, the BW is one of the systems that are created inside a customer's grid. So this system composes of an SAP environment, but it also knows that it's running on HANA. And so you can optionally hook up HANA and say, okay, I want that to be monitored as part of a service. So this thing is in yellow status because the impact is from a HANA database underneath of it. All right, so again, you can follow this process. And so the beautiful thing here is that you can relate to different areas. So you can see, you know, users that are on the system, what their response times are, the availability of the application. You can have the availability of the database itself, right? You can have, in fact, multiple of these up, and then you can put them up next to each other. And you can take a look and maybe even alerts from the CCMS application itself. So because alerts here might be related to alerts to database, you know, it's nice to put them together, right? And again, if you are in this particular case, you can drive. So here I have HANA alerts. I'm able to go down to this level and click onto that bar chart. And the next thing you know, I'm into that interval where those alerts happen. Now, compare this to what Solution Manager is doing. It's just giving you tons of alerts, and then how many times they happen. They don't really give you a time window that you can drill in from a high level when something might have triggered a threshold violation, and then you can drill down. So with this, you can do this very quickly. So we pull in alerts from all managed systems, and we time synchronize them, so that gives you the ability to do time-based correlation. And then you can also visually do that. Anyway, so let's go in, because this is HANA, let's go in and take a look more what we do out of the box. And again, this is flexible because it's cloud-based. We can define any additional things we want to. In this case, for instance, I may have a bunch of things like, so we look at alerts already, but we can also take a look at, let's look at something in red here. So you can open up the grid by selecting and right mouse button on the actual grid that is in alert. It will open up. So you do now is in the same grid. You see memory information. So this is the leaf node. So you can click that and put it up here. All right. Now, what if I want to see why something like that happened? I can actually look at also response time, right? Is my response time related to my physical memory usage? It may or may not. What if I wanted to go and look at the service engine itself? I can further right mouse click and open up that leaf. And now I have the ability to see the grid with multiple areas that might interest me. So here I have my physical memory usage, my maybe CPU usage for that service, right? And then I may have the actual threads that are running. So how many jobs might be waiting, right, for that particular service? Maybe how many threads were running. You know, all of this help me to see if there's any patterns or correlation, right? So this is kind of a way to quickly do that and put on the context. Alternatively, we have a tree that does the same thing, right? So with this tree, it's just a different perspective. You can go into the same database and you can drill down. You can see alerts by clicking that. You can see availability. You can open up what's highlighted as red and see the context. It's bringing out the context and say, hey, what's my index server? And drill down this way. So this is just another presentation. So you can go down and look at this way. So is another view that people typically use to do the tree-based monitoring. So let's go back to here. Other areas I find in here that, let's say you came in and you have no idea. We put up a bunch of charts here, but there's actually an automatic health check way that we do. So you click on health on the HANA environment, and you have some that are yellow, some are red. You know, you have no idea what the causes are. We call a service health explorer. So if you click on the expand button on the service, it will actually discover all the components and list things that you can do a time-based visual correlation. You can again open up and say, I'm interested in seeing things on the same chart, just like similar before, but this one actually discover and shows you what's in alarm, and you can do that. And so easily you can put the same thing on the same chart and be on the same single pane of glass to monitor and manage your environment and see if there's any correlation. So I can quickly visually correlate this much faster than getting 5 pieces of information from 10 different screens and trying to see if there's any correlation, right? So that's kind of a one advantage there. We'll go back. A couple other features I wanted to show. As we wrap up here, we also have monitoring of SQL statements as well. So that's something that is useful, but the way we do it, we take a fresh approach to it. It's not going to be, just random bunch of alerts or even a random list of things, but we put it on a time base. So you can see in here, the top SQL statements, what their consumption of time is, and click into that time and you can see the statements themselves, right? So this is a kind of a better way, in our opinion, to be able to do root cause analysis and align information up in a time-sensitive manner, so that it can help you manage and monitor and do root cause analysis with a few clicks, and again, without installing or managing anything from a software installation or agent standpoint. One last thing I want to point out also is we have the ability to integrate and a lot of useful things for the automation side. We saw once already about garbage cleanup, but every database or every environment you manage might have things that you want to check on a regular basis. For this is an example where we automated a bunch of mini checks. So the mini checks for the database can be scheduled and run periodically, or can be run ad hoc and send you a report via email, HTML format. So for instance, I actually want daily report of my backup to see if it was successful last night. So in this case, I run a script that's actually provided by SAP, but there's like tons of scripts provided by SAP that's sitting everywhere. We centralize the management piece here so that you can actually see the that it ran. See, I have my backup, my newest backup. So I know this one backup ran today, and my size of the backup simply because it is automated and it's scheduled on the system. Right. So there's a lot more than just monitoring. There's automation and management help you to be able to centrally manage tons of things in one place, have central script, centralized, monitored, scheduled, automated. And then when you have a performance issue, to allow you to go from a dashboard level and be able to either dive in from an alert standpoint or dive in from a chart or a grid, and then take a look at it from the perspective of drilling in from a grid perspective. All right, so this is kind of covers the kind of HANA monitoring, system alert management, and automation. So we provided some background about what tools are available at SAP and what other third-party tools, including the SAP HANA Management Pack and the IT-Conductor cloud-based platform. At this point, thank you for your time, and we'll see you again at the next webinar. And if you have any questions, feel free to send any of us an email.